first became interested in helping new mothers successfully breastfeed when I failed to breastfeed my own daughter 19 years ago. I was in residency and I just blamed myself for the failure, assuming it was because I didn't have enough milk or I didn't really know what I was doing, but it turned out to be something much different. When I was first hired into practice, I was hired by a pediatric ear, nose, and throat practice. And a lot of the patients that came in were babies that had a diagnosis of something called tongue tie. I had never really heard of tongue tie before, but they exhibited the same symptoms in nursing that my daughter did. So I took a special interest in trying to help them. By releasing the tongue tie and allowing the baby to nurse and latch on right away, there was an immediate improvement in the way the baby nursed. And that led me to continue to work with these mothers, and more babies came in. And actually, more and more babies came in without tongue tie that had very similar issues breastfeeding than those that had tongue tie. So I adjusted the procedures and was able to get even more babies nursing, and eventually developed a whole methodology for how to assess babies. Some key indicators that new moms should look out for when they start nursing their baby is pain, the amount of time the baby takes to nurse, and also whether or not your breasts are fully emptied. And when I talk about pain, I don't mean just a little bit of pain here and there as you're learning to adjust the latch. I mean excruciating pain that lasts for more than a few days. That also causes physical damage to your breasts. You should also be aware of how long your baby takes to nurse. On average, your baby should take about 10 to 15 minutes on each breast every 2 to 3 hours for the first 4 weeks or so. While there's great variability for different moms, that's a general rule to compare to. If your baby takes an hour and is hungry an hour later, they're probably not transferring milk out of your breast sufficiently. Another indicator that's important is whether or not your breasts feel empty after you nurse. It's hard in the beginning when your breasts are engorged to tell how much milk has been transferred out of your breast by your baby, but you should feel a difference from the start of the feed to the end of the feed. If you're having these difficulties, you may ask yourself, which doctor do I see? Do I see my OB-GYN? Do I see my pediatrician? Do I find an ear, nose, and throat doctor or dentist to help? And that's a good question. Unfortunately, there is no such thing as a breastfeeding doctor who's specifically trained for breastfeeding. There are a lot of people in the medical world who work with breastfeeding moms and babies, but unfortunately, in our Western medical practice, we aren't trained specifically on how breastfeeding is supposed to work, so it's hard to know which doctor to see. That's why I wrote this book, Better Breastfeeding, so you as a mom can be empowered to have a better understanding about what should be happening so that you know when there's a problem, and you can ask your doctors very specific questions to help guide them in helping you make the right choices. You may think the time to start learning about breastfeeding is after your baby is born, but the truth is, it's important to empower yourself with as much information as possible while you're still pregnant. That's because your baby's ability to breastfeed and your milk supply are interrelated and time-dependent. Right off the bat, when your baby is born, your baby needs to be able to gape, which is open as wide as possible, and latch onto your breast correctly. If your baby can't latch on correctly, then they're going to struggle to be able to transfer milk out, and if your baby can't transfer milk out, then you'll have an issue with your supply later down the road. If you wait too long and your supply has diminished, it's harder after the first 4 to 6 weeks to bring your supply back than it is to encourage your supply right from the beginning. When I first started seeing babies, I thought I was just replicating treatments that already existed. I had no idea that I was developing something new. Patients came from near and far, from the tri-state area, even as far as Pennsylvania, and before I knew it, I was known as the baby whisperer. After over 18 years in practice, I treated over 22,000 baby mom pairs. And then the pandemic hit. And like many other physicians, I lost my practice. But I wanted to share what I had learned through my practice with more moms. When I was seeing moms and babies in my practice, every time I saw them, I was met with the same questions. How come nobody ever told me this before? Why are you the only person saying this? It would have been so much easier if we knew this information before so we wouldn't have to go through so much suffering. That's why I wrote the book, Better Breastfeeding, to share this information with as many women as possible so they don't have to suffer unnecessarily and they can have as much information as they need.